Hi, this will be part 5 in the foliage prop creation tutorial series. Last video we talked about how to create the textures, especially the opacity texture for the foliage prop and how to export them from Substance Painter. This video will talk about how to get all the textures back into Maya, as well as how to import them into Sketchfab as well, which is essentially the same process. So back in Maya, here's our Maya file. And we have all of our individual parts, and what we're going to do is go to the Hypershade Material Editor, let this load. And one key thing if you're working just in Maya is that your Maya file needs to be in the same location as your texture maps. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go Save Scene As, and let's find our tree project, and we'll say Modular Tree Maya file, same location as your texture maps. So that's going to be helpful for us for when we start to load our textures. Alright, we're going to use a new Stingray PBS material. And we're going to go ahead and rename that. So we'll say Matte Tree. And the difference between using opacity maps and not using opacity maps is the standard preset for this Stingray PBS. Maya will accept opacity within Stingray, but you have to change the preset. So after we create a new Stingray PBS, we're going to click the preset material from preset standard and change this to transparent. So loading a preset or switching to custom deletes the old shader group. Yeah, that's fine. So click yes. That gives me the option to read the base color to find opacity detail. So standard transparent, then I'm going to click on use color, use opacity, use normal, use metallic, and roughness. So the difference is it gives the option to use opacity map detail. Now if I roll down to the texture section, there's no option to load in an individual opacity map. Well, that's fine because our opacity detail is in the base color as the alpha channel. So back in Maya, we're just going to load the color map. So click the checker box beside color, and then the folder in the file window, and then we'll go find our texture. Go tree map base color. We can see that the gray is background is transparent, which means it's going to read it as an opacity map in that area. So let's click open. And let's go ahead and add our other map. So if I go back to the material, then find our normal map. So we'll do normal. And then we'll go back and add our metallic map. We'll go back and add our roughness map. There we go. So I'm still only have 4 maps, but my base color actually has the alpha in the alpha channel. So it is going to work how we intended for it to work. Alright, so now all we have to do is just go apply our material to all of our objects. Right click and choose Assign Material to Selection. In the viewport, hit the 6 key so we can see all of our textures. And go take a look at this, and everything should run as expected. It does have the transparency that it's loading properly. Maya is going to have a little bit of an issue with some transparent areas. Okay, so if I look at this side, the back side of that leaf is not going to load particularly properly, so it does have a little bit of transparency issues. One thing we can do is in Maya, for any areas that are completely opaque, we can actually add a separate Stingray PBS material that does not have transparency to those, so that way in Maya we won't have this kind of weird kind of transparent issue that's going on. So let's do that. Let's go create a new Stingray PBS material. I'm going to call this one Matte Tree, and we'll do opaque. So this secondary material is going to use the same maps, but is not going to use the opacity detail. So I'm not going to change it to transparent preset. So I'm going to still load in all of my maps. Make sure I get all the right ones in here. But the difference is this one does not have the transparent default preset. Metallic. So it's not even going to look for a transparency map. Roughness. Okay. Alright, so any areas that are going to be transparent, I'm going to have my preset. Let's open this back up a little. Preset standard transparent. So all of my leaf areas are going to have this material set up. And then any areas that do not have any transparency associated with them, I have a second material that is just a default standard PBS that is not looking for transparency. So all these areas that do not have any transparency needed, I'm going to hold down, right click, and add it to my second material. There you go. And now I shouldn't have that weird overlap going on there. Okay. If you still have some weird transparency stuff going on, you can go up to the renderer, viewport 2.0, and go to the option box beside it, and try to change the transparency algorithm to depth peeling. Okay, that has a little bit better of a output for transparency. Okay, so one thing to note is that you can turn on lighting two-sided, and you'll be able to see both sides, but the dark side, or the one side of the geometry, is going to be kind of a darker color. It's just the way Maya approaches two-sided lighting with the Stingray PBS material. But that's how we can import in textures into Maya, including an opacity map. Alright, so in Sketchfab, I'm going to pull up the model that I already have here. So in Sketchfab, actually open it up over here. Alright, in Sketchfab I already have my model, so in this process you would still import an OBJ the same exact way. So the OBJ file that we have used before to be able to texture this, I would drag this into Sketchfab and upload that 3D model, and then I would go into the Edit 3D settings, and I already have these kind of in here, but I'll turn them off and kind of show you again. So let's say base color. It's fine. I don't think I can turn them off, so maybe. No, that doesn't look like I can. Okay. So what I would do is I would still import in those same maps. So the difference is the opacity, which I'll get to here in a second. So I'm still going to import my base color with the alpha, metallic, normal, and roughness. Okay, so my base color, I'm going to find the texture, import in my base color with alpha. You can see that there. Okay. Metallic goes into the metallic map, so we'll add, make sure our metallic is there. Roughness goes into roughness. Find our roughness map. We'll find normal, turn on normal, and then find our normal map. Same process as the previous model. The new one is opacity. So opacity is probably going to be off by default. And it's going to look like this with those 4 of the maps already on there. So when I want to load opacity, I'm going to click on opacity, and my opacity map is already on here. But what I'm going to do is go find that same base color map that has the alpha channel with opacity. And so, Sketchfab is going to automatically associate that with it. What it's going to do as default is create it as a blending opacity. So basically we add that same base color with opacity map as the alpha channel to the opacity section. And it's going to say blending, and one thing that's not going to be as natural right now, it says this type of transparency does not cast shadows. So in your lighting, if you have ground shadows turned on like what I do, or just turn on ground shadows, then shadows will not be cast for the opacity stuff. So I'm just going to change the opacity blending mode from blending to dithered. And dithered will allow you to see the shadows for anything with opacity. Okay, there's other options, refraction, additive, dithered, and masked. So, but the one that will show shadows successfully is dithered. Okay, so that way we can see the shadows and our transparency properly. So the difference is we're adding an opacity map, and the opacity that we're finding is the base color with alpha opacity detail. So it's the same map as what I pull into the base color map. So that way we can see transparency in Sketchfab the same way we would see the other maps, base color, normal, metallic, roughness. So that's overall the process of how to create texture maps using opacity for a foliage prop. and one, how to load them back into Maya properly. So I would go back to Maya and make sure I save my file, and that's saving the file in my folder, same location as my texture maps. So that's how to set up the materials properly in Maya. You really need two materials, one for the opacity areas, which are going to be a preset standard transparent Stingray PBS, and then a second one with the preset standard PBS for the areas of the models that do not have any opacity or transparency detail to them. So that's like my tree bark here. So my leaves all have opacity, transparency, so I'm going to use the standard transparent PBS for that one. And then the areas that are not need of transparency, I have a second material that's a Stingray PBS, but is the standard PBS. Then we also talked about how to set up the textures within Sketchfab, of how to add the opacity detail with that same base color with opacity in the alpha channel in Sketchfab. So you can turn on your shadows here, ground shadows, and be able to see the shadows properly, pending that we have the dithered and opacity map turned on. So save your scene or save your Sketchfab page, and now we can view this just like we view any other project, but we have the ability to see transparency now. Alright, that'll wrap up this video. Next video we're going to come back and I'll actually build the tree structure out of these modular tree pieces, and that'll kind of finalize the project.